To be really honest, I was kind of disillusioned with the military at the
Mm.
point that I was getting out. Some of my superiors, I would say, I feel like I lost trust in them.
Hmm.
I didn't feel like they were on my side and developing me and had my best interests in mind to help me develop to become a better leader so I could do the same thing for other people. I think a lot of the folks, when I was a lieutenant and a captain, and they were command sergeant majors and lieutenant colonels and majors, they did their time in a time of war when there was no war. It was the
Hmm.
Cold War. So they have a very different risk profile.
Welcome to the In the Field podcast, where we speak to veterans, service members, and those in the transition process to learn about their stories. Hey, Kim, how's it going? Oh,
Sorry.
get around the the mics just a little bit.
Hi, Holden.
Thank you so much for being on. I really
Yeah.
appreciate it. First question I ask all my guests: when was the last time you had an MRE?
Oh gosh. Probably 2012.
All right. Are you excited, trepidatious? What feelings do you have right now? Excited?
I'm just thinking of if anyone remembers that omelet and
Mm-hmm.
it was kind of green,
Yeah.
or that bread that was like hardtack or something. That's what I'm thinking of, but I do remember being really, really hungry
Yeah.
during like FTXs.
That is the key. My mistake. So all the other recordings we've done, I just like didn't eat beforehand. So I was naturally really hungry. So I don't know if that was throwing off my like acceptability of the MRE taste. But I ate just before this. So it'll be interesting to see like were the MREs good or was I just really hungry? Um well, let's look at the pile. Feel free to move the microphone, or I
Okay.
can kind of name off some of them for you. But we got Mexican style rice and bean, goulash. The choice is yours. Beef patty jalapeno.
I probably will take beef goulash because I think that goulashy type of,
Yeah, the
mixed
stews or like anything
stew.
that's just
Yeah.
like mixed up is always good. Um,
Warfighter recommended, warfighter tested, warfighter approved. That's
they
awesome.
have their
Awesome.
slogans right there at
Yeah.
the MRE factory. What do I go for? We'll do the chicken stew. I'll join you in the stew style
Stew.
MRE. And if you need some scissors, they're right here as
I'm gonna try to
well.
open it the old-fashioned way.
I know,
Fingers are
right?
not what they used to be.
Some of them are easier to open than others. I have found that there's some inconsistency on
Yeah,
the
this one. Okay.
here. Yeah, no. I'm pretty sure we had one of the Navy SEALs use scissors to open them
Oh
up as
no.
well. And I think the Navy SEAL heated it up too. So, if it's good enough for a Navy SEAL, then I feel like it's good enough for everybody else.
Absolutely.
So as we open these up, I always like to start at the beginning, right? Kim as a kid, either in, middle school or high school, like what was it like growing up? And did you know that the military was going to be a path for you?
I grew up in Chinatown, Los Angeles. My parents are from Hong Kong.
Uh-huh.
So I had a tiger mom, and I grew up like playing piano and violin, getting straight A's and studying for the SAT so I could get into a good college. My mom had tears for the Ivy Leagues. That's how ridiculous that was.
Right.
So when I told her I wanted to go to West Point, she was really disappointed.
What got you interested into West Point? And were you looking at the other academies too?
Yeah,
Keep in
yeah.
mind, Army versus Navy game, this isn't going to release before the game, but that it's actually happening, I think, tomorrow.
That's right. That's right. I actually didn't know very much at all about the Army
Mhm.
or the Navy or the Air Force or anything. And so I grew up in Los Angeles, and most people just didn't really talk about the military. And in Chinese culture, it's just not something that they celebrate. But as a kid, I was really athletic and gung ho, and I loved to do karate and
Yeah.
taekwondo, and I played all the sports. So when I heard about this place where you could learn to lead troops into battle and prove yourself and be really physical, I gravitated immediately, and
Mhm.
I was like, oh, I want to go there.
Was there anything particular that got your awareness of West Point? Was it a recruiter coming to your school, or Googling online, or a movie? Like, I think, with me, when I grew up, my dad served his 1 year compulsory service in the Army, but nobody really in my family served. And so, as silly as it sounds, I mean, like, my exposure was like Call of Duty, or, video games. And then, particularly, yeah, I mean, in high school, a recruiter coming up, to me, when they were in the lunchroom being like, oh, okay, that was all I knew about the military.
I read a lot of sci-fi and fantasy, and
Mhm.
a lot of the heroes and heroines in the books were people that I related to,
Mhm.
and I liked, the hero's journey is actually something that all of us go through.
Yeah.
That is what makes us as human beings really feel like when we wake up every day and we're doing something that's hard, that it's worth doing.
Mhm.
So, I mean, I'm talking about the hero's journey now because I'm currently, I co-founded a startup that does narrative storytelling.
Right.
So we talk a lot about storytelling, what makes humans tick,
Yeah.
what keeps us interested. So I think from a young age, as for me, it was just being part of a story. And I do very much think that the military is a great community,
Yeah.
and you're part of something greater than yourself. A lot of the sci-fi and fantasy books that I used to read when I was a kid, same thing, right? You like epic battleground, in Galactica, or you got to fight the dragons in order to save the universe and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And I also played a lot of StarCraft.
Okay. Yeah. One of our previous guests, Diablo. So
Yeah,
now we have,
Diablo.
and I played World of Warcraft. So I think we have the entire Blizzard.
Blizzard. I tried downloading
We're not a
it.
sponsor of Blizzard, but
No,
I mean, if they want to, totally, we'll take it.
Totally. Don't
'Cause-
say no to revenue. Yeah, I used to play a lot of StarCraft to the point that my mom, she thought I was playing too much, and I'd
Yeah.
always be like, "Well, no, this is good for me because I'm learning strategy and how to." And actually, it turns out I did exactly that as a platoon leader, right?
Yeah.
Like deployed as a platoon leader, leading troops in Afghanistan. And so I think that way of thinking and logistics, right? Just
Mhm.
thinking about the Terrans building the supply depots and that kind of thing. And deploying your troops and command and control, all that stuff you actually get to do in StarCraft, which is kind of cool
Yep.
and so much fun. And I used to get lost in it. And my mom cut up the CD in front of me back when you had to
No.
play it on CDs.
Back when actually CDs and CD-ROMs
Yeah.
were a thing to play video games. Yes.
But I knew this was happening.
Hmm.
So I already had a burned copy of
Nice.
the CD. And so I could keep playing. I wrote down the CD key and everything. So all good. All good.
Nice. It's so funny. I used the same excuse for World of Warcraft because of like the online auction house and all that, and the in-game trading. I was like, no, I'm learning economics. I'm learning how to communicate, which I kind of stand
I
by a
agree.
little bit. And in college, in my microeconomics class, my final paper was on EVE Online and whether or not you could use real world trading within video games to be at like analogy to
Look at you,
real.
business
And I was
person.
I was like,
I love it.
yeah, I'll take it. And the professor was like, I don't believe this. He was like, still got a good grade, but he was like, no, you're wrong. And I'm like, all right, well, I tried.
Gotta keep trying all the time. New ideas. It's great.
Did you ever convince your mom before leaving West Point? If so, what ended up convincing her? Or did you kind of just have to say, like, listen, whether you like it or not, I'm going?
Well, I think when I was deciding, I was in the back of the car, and both my mom and dad were in the front, and they like screeched to the side of the road. I think we were on the highway, or in California we say freeway. So we were on the freeway, and they screeched to the side, and they really drilled me. And they said, "Do you know that you will be going to war, and that you might die, and that also you might be making decisions that could affect the lives of other people? Are you really serious about going into the military? It's
Yeah.
not just about West Point." And of course, at 17 years old, I was like, yes, I am. I'm ready for this.
Uh-huh.
And all of us who go into the military might have a different view of what could happen. But when you go through it and you go through the grind, I mean, I really do think you come out a better person.
Yeah.
And I think my parents saw that too. And of course, actually, hats off to them. They were so supportive all throughout West Point.
That's great.
I was like, I played volleyball at West Point, and they flew from Los Angeles to West Point in New York to come attend my volleyball games even though I was sitting on the bench. Like
Mhm.
that's the kind of parents they
That's
are.
awesome. Yeah.
And that's the kind of parent I want to be too. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys can tell through the video, but
I know.
I am 8.5 months pregnant. So thinking about parenthood and
Yep.
is very much top of mind.
Are you afraid that when your kid grows up, 17, and are you prepared for the same headaches and trials and tribulations you put your parents through?
Probably. I mean, I'm sure I'm going to get a double.
Yeah.
Yeah. And my husband's also, I mean, he's a troublemaker as well.
Yeah.
And he's also a startup entrepreneur too. He's got lots of ideas.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I only hope that our kids, I mean, we're happy with however they turn out.
Yeah.
We want them to be their best selves,
Mm-hmm.
to reach their full potential in whatever area that would be in. I mean, I feel that way about leadership in general. Like, I mean, that's the thing that I feel like is now my forte that took me many, many years to cultivate, which is leading teams and getting, helping people and supporting them to become their best selves.
Yeah. Will you still respect your kid, though, if they pick the wrong team on or wrong race on StarCraft?
There is no wrong race, except for maybe Protoss. Just kidding.
I was a Warcraft 3, so I started on Warcraft, and I've always played Alliance, besides like a couple Horde characters. And I know in StarCraft, I think there's some contentiousness between some of the different races that you can play.
Yeah, I think when you start off, I mean, I can't believe we're actually talking about this, but when you start
I can
off,
nerd out on this all day. We won't, just in case anyone's listening, but I will.
Well, yeah, I could totally nerd out on it, but yeah, if our kids play some video games, I wouldn't be surprised because my husband plays a lot too.
Yeah.
He's actually putting his rig together so that he can play. What's he trying to play? I think he's I forgot the name of it, but he's going to play a bunch of video games before we have our first kid. So that he's got a month to do that.
I was gonna say my sister now has a 1-year-old, so my niece, baby Rowan, is doing wonderful. But her my brother-in-law, her husband, basically gifted me a whole bunch of stuff that
he can't spend time on anymore.
That he can't spend time on anymore. I'm like,
Aw.
I'll hold on to it for you. One day you'll be able to get it back. But he goes like, I have zero time. So we're gonna jump into West Point, but before that, what did you get in your MRE? Anything exciting?
Oh, I have patriotic sugar cookies, but at first I thought it said probiotic sugar cookies, which would also be pretty exciting. There is now a nutrition facts, which there wasn't before, that has a list of vitamins.
Yep.
Okay, vitamins and minerals. Gum. I always wondered about the gum because people always said it would, if you were constipated, to chew the gum.
I don't know if I've blocked that out of my memory or I completely forgot or I was just completely ignorant of it. Every single guest has brought that up.
Really?
And I swear I was like, I don't remember that being said. But clearly I'm in the wrong or I have amnesia because like everyone said that.
Maybe you just never needed it. So.
Exactly. Maybe I just never needed it.
What about you? What do you have?
I've got a First Strike bar, which these were always pretty darn good. And
cool.
I think these were new. These banana and pumpkin like fruit purees.
Oh, baby food. Awesome.
Yeah, they don't go bad. Not sure if they're suitable for babies, but if you need them, then cheese-filled pretzels, which I'm pretty sure are just the what are those things?
I forgot what they're called, but I'm just thinking the ones at Costco that you can
post-production
get, like
right here. We'll get them.
Yeah.
Get the graphic up. Crackers, as always. I never like these chocolate hazelnut protein. I love the basically like powdered Gatorades, like the lemon limes or whatever.
Oh, I have one of those. Do you want to trade?
Ooh, I mean, if you don't mind, I will trade you.
I have beverage-based orange powder.
I will take it if you're open for chocolate hazelnut.
Sure, let's do it.
There we go.
More protein.
Exactly. It's good for you, and it doesn't ever expire.
There's whey in here.
Is that good or bad?
I don't know. It doesn't matter to me.
We're still a few years away, my fiance and I, of thinking about kids. So all I know is through my sister, and all I know is it's a lot of work.
Yeah, but so fulfilling.
But it's fun and fulfilling. Exactly. No, it's worth it. When I was chatting with a friend, and we were in the Uber, and he was just like, it's exhausting, da. Not in like a bad way, just saying like, it takes up a lot of your energy. And then he took out his phone, and it was a screensaver of his kid, and like you could just see his face
Oh.
immediately like light up and like smile, and he's like, "Oh, well, it's all worth it." I'm like, "All right, like that's pretty cool." Like
It's
even if you know it's draining, it's like the amount of joy you get from it is obviously much more.
yeah, I feel like I don't know, things have changed for me, obviously. I'm sure that the hormones are raging. But when I was like 10 years ago, even 5 years ago, I didn't want to touch babies. I didn't
Mm-hmm.
like other people's babies. I was like, I don't want to like accidentally drop them.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, once my sister started having kids, I'm just all over them. And like
Yeah.
I just gravitate towards children. I feel like I'm a mom now.
Yeah. I remember when I was in my early 20s, I told my mom, I was like, I'm never going to have kids, don't want kids, da da da. She's like, oh, it'll change, it'll change, it'll change. I'm like, no, it won't, no, it won't. Um, and I will say I'm not ready yet. Like, I don't think the light has like fully switched yet. But, I'm engaged, clearly a person I want to, spend the rest of my life with. And it is fun, like starting to plan, like what does 10 years from now look like? What does 20 years from now look like? Like, what do we want to do within our careers? And like a large part of that is just like having building a family together and having your own traditions and things that you want to do
Yeah.
together. I'm going to borrow those
Please
scissors
go.
with you.
Yes.
Did you fill it over the line?
No, I never do.
Ooh.
But I remember I like you have to prop it up.
Yep. So a rock or something. And thankfully we have plenty of somethings to prop up on.
Oh,
All
the
right.
bread, the mini loaf, the sliced whole wheat mini
Ooh.
loaf. Yeah, that's
The
gonna be the rock.
joys. So let's jump into your time at West Point. I think you said you did did you do athletics in high school? Like how prepared did you think you were for West Point? And kind of what were the biggest shock factors when you got there?
I was like a very bookish, smart kid who had no common sense.
Mm-hmm.
So I got hazed pretty badly. And I was fine because it was exactly what I needed. And I was always a try-hard,
Mm-hmm.
but I didn't quite understand maybe like social dynamics or ways to influence people.
Mm-hmm.
And so the big shocker for me was just, how to present oneself, how to talk to people. I was much more of a nerd in high school.
Right.
Um, how to give feedback, how to do AARs, how to, all the tools that the military gives you, I think are really still applicable to me today.
Right.
I've pretty much since I've left the military only just started my own businesses.
Right.
And a lot of the culture kind of mechanics that I've learned from the military I've taken to each one of the companies that I've been a part of.
Right.
So it's been really valuable.
That's awesome. And did you know what you wanted to do within the Army while at West Point, or when did it kind of become clear to you what your path within the service was going to look like?
I think in my generation, we were in the middle of 2 wars.
Mm-hmm.
So everybody wanted to go infantry, including me,
Mm-hmm.
even though back then women could not go infantry. And I wanted to go to Ranger school. I remember attending the Ranger briefing. And the closest thing I could do was go to Sapper school. So that would have been my dream. So I was just that type of person. Or, it really is, again, like the narratives, right? It's a dream that as a young person I got infected with. And now as I get older, I realize, oh, these are ways in which like people are influenced, why they feel that they want to be part of something, why they want to do something, why they're motivated. So I was very much trying to be as gung-ho as possible. If I could have gone special forces, that was like, I
Mm-hmm.
think I think you're also kind of in this year group as well, because you're 3 years behind me.
Yeah. So I was on the enlisted side, and
Okay.
so I was enlisted forward observer.
Okay.
Yep. Yep. 2011. is when I
Okay.
entered
So
it.
you're already super gung-ho. I feel like as
Yeah.
the officers, we had something to prove, you know?
I was just trying to figure out life. I mean, I think
Totally.
I became gung ho, but it was like I'm going to fail out of high school and college isn't going to be for me. I need something.
And look at you. You went to Stanford.
Look at me
and
now.
starting all these businesses, like
Yeah.
learning to code in like, I don't know, whatever short amount of time it took you. That's amazing. That's amazing.
I'm stumbling my way through life, but it's working. And a lot of the skills from the military have definitely helped.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay. So you graduate West Point. What was the eventual kind of MOS that you picked up on? And then how was it switching over, switching gears from academics of West Point to now full-time, service member?
So I branched engineers.
Mhm.
And the reason I did was because it was the closest thing that I felt like could be to combat. And also I majored in mechanical engineering too.
Mhm.
So it just seemed like the right fit.
Right.
And it was great. I learned a lot. Essayons, as they would say, but I think in French they would say essayon. Anyway, it doesn't matter. I had a great time as an engineer. So I started off, I was stationed in Germany, which was awesome.
Oh, nice.
I was in,
Grafenwehr or Ramstein or?
I did go to Grafenwehr a lot because that was the training area.
Yeah.
That was Grafenwehr Hohenfels back then. I think Bamberg is now closed, unfortunately. But so Bamberg and Schweinfurt were my bases.
Got it.
That was this like young butter bar. Apparently, I butter barred really hard. Whatever that means.
How much gear did you lose? And this is on the record.
I have this distinct memory of doing what's when you're going through all the gear and you have
We'll post it in post production.
Oh, gosh,
we'll search it up in post production.
And like and we were missing
not PMC. No, that's
the vehicles. When you have
we'll pop it up.
Inventories.
Inventory.
Yeah, inventories. And one of my squad leaders, we were in the middle of deployment at that time, and I was left, right, seating out. I'm forgetting the words for that too. And we were missing a helmet. And
oh no!
My squad leader just like grabbed one helmet and then like just moved to the side and then like went and put it on the other side and that kind of thing. And
for those listening, allegedly moved a helmet, but according to all records, there were 2 helmets.
Exactly, but we were so scrappy because we were this tiny route clearance platoon by ourselves in this Polish base. Gozny.
Yeah. We had some Czech people on our small COP. It was just us and the Afghan National Army, and then
because you're a forward observer.
Yeah, it was a forward observer, and then when we closed that down and then moved to Fob Shank, then there was like
Fob Shank.
Oh, you're okay.
Oh. Yeah. I hate Fob Shank.
We had there was the Czechs, the Germans. I think we maybe had some Polish people there too. Basically everybody and anybody was on that base.
Yeah, that base, Fob Shank was a hole. It was all. It was. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know your experience there, but
not great.
Yeah,
a lot of indirect.
lot of indirect. A lot of
to the point, which is funny because on the COP, I mean, we got small arms fire, but not once or twice we got indirect, and then we got into Shank, and I'm like, well, now we're on a fob, it'd be so much easier. And it's every single day you're you just hear the alarms, and at a certain point you're just going all right, just take me out at this point.
I felt like it was just so sad because there was a baker at Fob Shank who baked all the bread. He was a local guy.
I think because they had the dining facility so close to the airfield and they had the big balloon. I forget, and I'm talking about forgetting
stuff. Yeah, people would
stuff.
shoot at the balloon all the time.
They would just use that as an aiming post, and it's oh, why are we taking all this indirect? And you're well, there's a giant aim marker on the base. It's really easy to figure out where we're at when you have a blimp.
Yeah, I remember that blimp.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just remember this baker, they did some horrible things to him and they posted him outside the base. And it's just, I think that was a reminder for me, or maybe a wake up call for me, just how horrible things could be. And that you just have each other. You have the people you love, you have to be really, just have gratitude for what you do have and just know that things could be a lot worse.
Yeah.
And even I'm sure that our experiences at Fob Shank are not as bad as compared to stuff that's happened in the past, other people's experiences. But at least for me, I came out relatively unscathed. But I just wish life on some of the stuff that we saw, I didn't feel like right about it. And that's actually why I ended up starting a business in
Yeah.
Afghanistan after.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Can we talk about that a little bit?
sure.
Yeah, I would love to. So, when did you start thinking about? Was that while you were still in, or when you have transitioned out?
So I went to business school after I got out,
Mm-hmm.
and there they ask you, what will you do with your one wild and precious life?
Mm-hmm.
Which is a quote from Mary Oliver. And I thought to myself about the experiences I had in Afghanistan. There was one time I went out with the provincial reconstruction teams to meet up with Afghan women. Um, and so they like had this whole feast for us.
Yeah.
And we sat down, we like took off our hijabs and
Mm-hmm.
everything. And it was this really intimate moment because they would only show their faces with other women.
Right.
So it was like a sleepover. It was really great. And we wanted to talk about political representation with them. That's what the
Mm-hmm.
PRT team wanted to do. But it kind of went way over their heads. And what these women wanted to talk about was hygiene items,
Mm-hmm.
school supplies for their kids, sewing machines so they could bring income to their families. And that's not what we were there for. And so
Right.
that was one of the first lessons that I learned was if you are going to go someplace and do something better for people, have influence, be part of the narrative, be part of something greater than oneself. You have to learn to listen first.
Mm-hmm.
Listen and understand the context before you just start prescribing solutions.
Yeah.
So that really stuck with me. And so when I got out, that story is what I thought about when I was asked at business school, what will you do with your one wild and precious life? So my friend Keith was in Afghanistan at the time, Keith Alaniz. He was part of the Afghan Hands, which was, I
Mm-hmm.
think, General Petraeus, one of his initiatives. So he was with local, he was like advising local provincial governance.
Mm-hmm.
And he was telling us about this farmer named Haji Yosef who was
Mm-hmm.
trying to sell saffron by going to these NGOs. But
Yeah.
he was clearly in the wrong place because if you really wanted to build a business, you have to go find buyers.
Yeah.
You have to go to Whole Foods. You have to find chefs,
Mm-hmm.
if you're going to try to sell saffron. And we were business school students at the time. So me and Emily Miller, who's also one of my classmates at West Point, we deployed together and we would like talk on the zipper line all the time. Like when I was a battle captain at some point and she was doing night ops.
Yeah.
And we would talk on the zipper line. Anyway, these are kind of the memories and the context that it in the background towards forming Rumi Spice, which is the
Mm-hmm.
name of our company, our startup. So when Keith was telling us about Haji Yosef, it struck me and Emily, who were both at business school, the same business school at the time. Why don't we do something about this? Why don't we connect Afghan farmers to the market and put our newly found business skills to use in sales and marketing and supply chain and operations and finance? Why don't we start a business? So we started Rumi Spice, and in the summer between my first and second year, bought a ticket to Afghanistan.
Wow.
My entrepreneurship professor came with me, and we met with 11 farmers.
Yeah.
And it was in this setting where I was drinking tea and I was like wearing a hijab, and it was so different than being like a platoon leader with all my gear.
I was gonna
and-
say, like, how did it feel years later going back to a country in a completely different role?
Absolutely, it was just so different because when I was a platoon leader, I was surrounded by all my troops,
Mm-hmm.
and I remember coming across various Afghan National Army folks who some of them would not speak to me at all because I was a woman, and other people would be so intrigued that I was
Mhm.
like a platoon leader. And I remember one time we were doing this biometrics mission, and it was horrible because we had to go like take pictures and do the fingerprints for this town so
Right.
we could build a database so that if they found fingerprints on munitions and stuff,
Somebody
they
else.
would have a database to go off
Right.
of. But who's going to stay around and voluntarily get your picture taken and your
Right.
fingerprints taken? So when we rolled up to this town, all was left was like children and women and old men.
Yep.
And then one guy came up to us and was like, and he came up to me and he said, "Why do you come here with all of your guns and your weapons and your body armor? You could come with me to have tea with my family right now,
Yeah.
we would welcome you in. And in fact, I have a brother who's not married. You could become his wife and become part of our family.
Yeah.
And of course, I would never live that comment down with my troops because they were always like, our platoon leader was about to get traded in to be an
Yeah.
Afghan bride for like a couple goats. Yeah. But I mean, that guy had a point
Yeah.
because, and that really stuck with me, which is that engagement, right? Like we're
Mhm.
going there to do a biometrics mission that probably wasn't going to actually make a dent anywhere. But
Yeah.
if we were going to go in there and thinking about those Afghan women again, right? Like
Mhm.
understanding, listening, what can we do together? How can we create value together?
Yeah.
That's the kind of place that I want to be, which is probably why I've been an entrepreneur my whole adult life now. In
Yeah.
addition to being a platoon leader, to me, those are two very similar things, similar skill sets.
And so I'm jumping around here a little bit, but I guess did you at any point think the military was going to be a 20-year career? Or I guess, was there a turning moment for you where you said, like, I want to go into business school? Or, was that, it's kind of sounded like there was a few moments during your deployment that uh, caused you to question, like, am I doing like, is this actually the path? But was there a pivotal moment that you said, actually, I want to now switch out and go back into the civilian world?
To be really honest, I was kind of disillusioned with the military at the
Mm.
point that I was getting out.
We can
Some of
cut this also if, like,
Yeah,
you
so I'm
say
just
something.
being honest.
If you
Yeah.
say something and you're like, I actually don't want that in, we can totally cut it. So
I don't care. That's fine.
yeah.
Yeah, you can cut whatever you want.
Okay.
You can keep whatever you want in.
Okay.
Some of my superiors, I would say, I mean, I feel like I lost trust in them.
Mhm.
I didn't feel like they were on my side and developing me and had my best interests in mind to help me develop to become a better leader so I could do the same thing for other people.
Yeah.
I think a lot of the folks, when I was a lieutenant and a captain, and they were command sergeant majors and lieutenant colonels and majors, they did their time in a time of war when there was no war. It was the
Mhm.
Cold War. So they have a very different risk profile. And I remember they branded me as like, I don't know, I was like stupid or something. So all I was doing was like the assistant S3 operations, and I was like
Oh.
filing stuff in,
Yeah.
I mean, maybe it's only because there wasn't that enough to do, but I was not the only person feeling this way.
Right.
Like I ended up, I went to Harvard Business School, and then I went to MIT after that. Like I'm not stupid. And so one of the crazy things is sometimes how leaders don't recognize when there's like people who want to do good and and you
Yeah.
can develop them. And maybe they're stubborn or they're slightly going the wrong direction, but if they have their heart in the right place,
Yeah.
don't overlook that. And so I often do that for my own people too. Every time I'm with a team, and if somebody's heart's in the right place, they just need a little bit of steering. Like,
Yeah.
absolutely, I'll wrap my arms around you. Like, we'll figure this out together.
I've noted the officer ranks are definitely different than the enlisted ranks. And I know that at a certain point, officer promotions or officer progression becomes a lot more political. I think that maybe happens at the very, very senior ranks. But let's say from private to maybe sergeant first class, it is maybe not entirely a meritocracy, but there's, I think, much clearer routes. And at least on my side, I noticed that the NCO Corps does a very good job at mentoring and bringing up and like trying to do that kind of servant leadership. Not to
Yeah.
say that the officer
Maybe I
ranks
should have
don't
been
do
an
that.
NCO.
Cut your pay in half, do a lot less crappy stuff. No, I mean, oh, and I'm losing my voice. Can't fix that in post. The the pros with the NCO Corps or the pros on the enlisted side is I think there is maybe, and I can only speak to one side, a little bit more of that camaraderie where I have noticed, at least the officers that I talk to, and weirdly enough, now that I'm out and, I went to Stanford and just inherently through business and startups, a lot of my friends now are just officers, that it does become this more corporate structure. And I think to what you had mentioned, you'll see that in corporate world too, where
Yeah.
you kind of become this cog in the machine or this kind of, there's no more upward mobility, but they're not going to fire you. They're just going to kind of keep you there for whatever reason. which doesn't really occur in the startup world because
Oh yeah,
if you're
no.
only 5 or 10 employees, like there's no room for inefficiencies.
No, and you're so much closer. It really feels like a squad
Hmm.
when you're in a small startup. At this point, I've been in like 3 or 4 small startups.
Yeah.
And some of them have gotten more success than others, but what's been the most fulfilling is doing it with people who you want to see every day,
Yeah.
who you're growing together and you're wrestling with them, because it's never going to be easy. It's not a walk in the park,
Yeah.
but nor is deploying somewhere with your troops,
Exactly.
right? Like, and then you get to love them and they love you back, and you grow together. And I love that, and I don't want to do anything else.
I
I hear
was,
the corporate world's not like that.
I guess you can kind of consider the military a little bit as a corporate world, right? I mean, it's a big
Yeah, that's
bureaucracy.
fair.
I had spent some time at ZX Ventures, which is the incubator arm of AB InBev. So I guess that's
Oh
probably the
yeah.
closest to big corporate that I got. And I remember I was talking to somebody literally just yesterday that had asked me about, you know, how do you get employees to buy into the mission and the vision of the company? And to some extent, I think as a startup founder, it is important to say, here's the vision. This is why we're all doing it, right? I mean, similar as a company commander or a platoon leader, you want to make sure everyone's bought in. But in startups, if people are then still questioning it or aren't bought in at that point, then it's just like not a good fit, right? I think
Yeah.
if you're working for Microsoft, nothing against Microsoft, are you fully bought into the Microsoft mission? Like maybe not. You're maybe just pulling a paycheck or, going to work because you kind of like the people. But in startups, this is what we're doing. Hopefully you agree with it. But then if not, hey, maybe it's just not a good fit for you.
Yeah. Yeah. I totally agree with that. I don't have anything more to add actually
Yeah.
to what you're saying. I just totally agree with that.
When you transitioned out, were there any challenges you faced? I mean, you had gone to West Point is a fantastic undergraduate school. Did you feel fully prepared for your MBA program, or was there kind of a crawl, walk, run progress to going back into the civilian world?
I mean in terms of leading teams and communicating, I think the military really prepared me
Hmm.
very, very well for business school and for starting businesses. But in terms of like accounting and finance,
Right, not
no, not so much. I do think one of the most undervalued parts of business is sales. People always think it's like, especially if you're an engineer, right?
Mhm.
You just don't think you don't think very highly of salespeople.
Yeah,
But
because they're promising stuff that you don't have built, and you're like, well,
yeah,
all right,
exactly. Yeah, they're like an annoyance.
yep,
But they're the ones who are they bring in the bucks, they bring
yeah,
in the bacon. And so as a startup CEO, you do a lot of the sales. And so learning how to get people to say yes to you,
hmm,
to say yes to buying a case of Saffron, or to put Rumi Spice into all the Whole Foods in the United States, or to be on Shark Tank and to get Mark Cuban to say yes, that kind of thing. You have to learn how to do sales.
Sharks, today we are seeking $250,000 in investment in exchange for 5% of our company.
I just
Ugh.
love the idea of like, because I've heard, and tell me if this is right or wrong. I mean, it's not like what you see on TV. It's like you walk down the aisle, then they get a couple shots, then you have to wait there for like a minute.
Yeah, exactly.
And so it's like really, really awkward. And then they're like, all right, now go pitch.
Yeah, you actually you've been practicing pitching for a couple days, and they've been cutting people, like cutting teams every day.
Oh,
So it's a really dog eat dog sort of world.
yeah.
I remember Keith and we were waiting in the trailer to be called to actually go in there for the pitch, like the final pitch. We are like doing push-ups in the trailer,
Yeah.
getting all pepped
Getting
up.
some rip hits,
Yeah.
really trying to get the energy high.
And then when we finally got there, they like turned down the temperature really low, so it's super cold. And so we were
Oh
just
my God.
shivering, and I don't know why I never will wear high heels anymore. I
Uh-huh.
was wearing these like big high heels. And then you stand on this X, and then you go, first you go through like the shark tank, like the tanks on either side. It's really cool. It is kind of exactly what you see on TV. And then you can see the sharks ahead and they're all lined up. They're sitting down. Some of them are on their phones. This is like the, 100th and like 1,000th time that they've done this. They're not really paying attention to you. Well, couple of them are just to like stare you down.
Was Mr. Wonderful? Or?
He stares you down.
All right.
He stares everybody down. He does it on purpose. That's his job. I totally get it.
Cut to that shot.
And then you stand on the X, and then after a minute of just like, then you do your pitch, and it has to go flawlessly because you only have one shot. Because if you mess up,
they're like, no, you're just keep going.
They've got tons of other teams in the wings waiting to do the pitch, and they don't need you.
Do you know? So you said, like people are getting cut left and right. Like in one day of shooting, do you know how many people are actually pitching?
I don't remember, but I do have the story of Keith. I mean, in the military, you're trained to have like a monotone almost. That's professional. You can't have different. You don't want to have energy. But what happens in a camera is that, you gain 10 pounds in the camera and you also lose 40% of your energy.
Yep.
That's what they tell you. And so they kept trying to tell Keith, I mean, the rest of us too, that we were too professional, that we were more monotone, and that they were going to cut us. And so finally, the moment that they were going to cut us, Keith did a complete 180. And he was like, and Afghanistan has been cut off. And it was just like almost cartoonish when you saw it in person, but on the screen, it was perfect.
I noticed that, and I had done a little bit of streaming just for fun.
Yeah.
And you essentially need to characterize yourself. Like even in this, right? Like even when we're talking here, I'm not doing it as much because it's also like much longer form content. So it's like, it's hard to have that level of energy. But I do notice that I think with anything like on camera, you do have to play a character of yourself just so it picks up.
Yeah.
And you always see that. And so I have to ask, and we'll find the video. And so we're gonna be playing it here.
You gotta pay for the IP somehow.
Exactly. Well, we'll just hope.
We'll
okay,
whatever.
See if they find it.
Whatever.
Creative Commons. I think that's a license. Maybe.
Yeah, sure.
I don't know.
Yeah.
We'll ask our lawyers.
Fair use policy.
Did you use like because I always see Shark Tank pitches with like a pun, like, man, I'm not gonna get one off the top of my head here, but like, I don't know, it's like a hat company. It's like, and we've got you covered. Did you do any of that on your pitch?
I actually, right now, I don't even remember the pitch that well. That's how.
Did you do
much
that?
Time...
You got to do that. So whenever I prep for a pitch, is I always play a character of it. So I go, investors.
Imagine a world.
What is disruption? Disruption is AI technology being implemented. And then like I land.
Oh, you sold me. You sold
exactly,
me.
Right?
Yeah.
Are you in blockchain technology, AI? But I play a character of it, and then I tone it back for the actual investment. But it gives me a laugh, and honestly, that's half the time. Like half the reason why I do this is just to make myself laugh. But
yeah. Actually, this is one of the lessons I learned after the military when I was pitching for Rumi Spice, and I needed to raise money because otherwise we didn't have a company,
right.
And I didn't have a job because I got on the highway and burned off the off ramps to make this happen because that's what my mentor was like. You can't have a foot somewhere else and do this. Like you just gotta go.
Yeah.
And I think that's the best advice. If any startup founders out there, if you don't go 100% into it, it's not going to take off.
Yeah.
That's really what I think. I don't know if you agree.
No, I agree. I mean, there's definitely a level of, say you have a family of 3 and, you're living paycheck to paycheck. You can't just like quit your job, like if there's responsibilities. But I do think that there has to be a certain point where you have to go, am I going to do this? Yes or no?
Yeah.
And you just have to be able to commit to it. Given that there's a realistic expectation that like, you're not suddenly like, right, going to let your family go homeless or like, your kid without a job or, kid without a home. But I mean, a lot of time it's just, are you willing to commit to this 110%?
Yeah. And oftentimes, especially for VCs, I think you don't have that much data to go off of to make an investment. So you're
No.
investing in a person. And so you have to, again, going back to narrative, going back to believing in a dream. Are you, as the CEO and startup founder, able to paint that dream in a very compelling way?
Yeah.
Can you get people excited? I had to learn to do that. And I wasn't like that before. And I had to practice in front of the mirror like hours and hours at a time. One of my investors ended up sending me almost like to a mentor, a guy who was really good at sales, and he told me, okay, first you got to present yourself well, because I think I showed up in yoga pants. I was like, my computer wasn't working, and then I was slightly late. And he basically told me to have that that big dick energy.
Yeah.
So
bleep that or not.
I don't know, whatever. Yeah, and that really goes a long way.
Yeah.
Especially for this type of thing, but I think it goes a long way for other things as well. Like, are you really passionate about what you're doing? Can you get other people to be passionate with you and want to drop what they're doing and join you?
Yeah.
Whether they're buying your products or they're joining your team or they're investing in your startup, can you get people to be excited?
And so much of it, like you said, there's so little data behind it that so many of early stage investments are just, do I like this person?
Yeah.
Like, do I believe that this person is going to be able to operate this, company? Because at least at this stage, I think most investors know there's probably going to be a pivot in here. There's going to be highs and lows. You might be ending up doing something else. But do I believe that you'll get somewhere? And, with Context Ventures, I know that Instagram handle right here, we, with 80% of their investments go to veteran founders, and a lot of them happen to be either in their undergrad if they're enlisted, or in their MBA as officers. And this sounds harsh, but we usually don't invest when they're still students, not because we necessarily want them to drop out, but it's, you're gonna have to put so much time and energy in this, and every single, I'll be able to balance it, but it's like, you probably won't though, right?
No,
and so
can't balance. No.
When push comes to shove, are you willing to make that decision? And the answer isn't always drop out of school, right? Because I don't necessarily think that advocating for dropping out of school is always the right decision. But you do have to make that reconciliation of, do I want to finish school, and is that important to me? Or is my company important to me? And if the answer is I really want to graduate, then do that first. And then keep going with the company, and then do it once you graduate. Or if the company is really the thing that you want to do, then it's well, go on pause. It's not great, not ideal, but that's kind of the reality that we live in. Yeah.
In this world, there's just so many opportunities, so much data, so much content that you can choose from. And it's hard to say no to things and put your full attention on just one thing. And I think that's actually becoming more of a skill than it used to be.
I'm going to totally misquote this. Was it Aldous Huxley? On 1982.
Okay.
What's the other book? You were more studious than me growing up.
I played too much StarCraft.
Brave New World. Brave New World.
Okay.
So there's 1982, which was up here on post production, and then Aldous Huxley, Brave New World, which I think Brave New World was. There's so much information out there. So then what is true, and how do you decipher what is real versus fake? And I think that a lot of that is today. It's I can do 50 different things. I could do this podcast. I could be a streamer. I can start this company versus that company. But what do I actually want to do?
Yeah, I'm totally with you. There's Yuval Noah Harari just came out with another book called Nexus, and it talks about information networks. And one of the ideas is intersubjective reality. So there's 3 levels of reality. There's objective, like a tree falls in the forest. It doesn't matter if anybody's witnessed it or not. It has fallen. And then there's subjective reality, which is what's happening inside everybody's head, like each person that you don't necessarily share, but that's your subjective reality. And then intersubjective reality is the stuff that we share together, that we also have a common language, or we both believe in the United States of America, or, these are narratives that we show up every day to PT in the morning in the Army. And that is actually an intersubjective reality, is the belief that we need to do that.
Yeah.
And so if you think about the world in terms of narratives and information networks, it's very interesting, especially in today's day and age, because nowadays we don't have just human actors anymore. We also have algorithms that are making recommendations about what content to watch or to take in. And I was just listening to how I didn't realize, but like Facebook's algorithm is what potentially caused Myanmar's really the genocide that happened in Myanmar.
Really?
Yeah, because the algorithms want more eyes to be on the platform and for people to stay engaged. And of course, violent videos are going to get people to stay more engaged, and outrage. And so we have more of an outraged society. And so if anybody talks about peace and, this just is too boring.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to get into that stuff. So, I mean, I think one of the reasons why our society is so divided politically and people just don't see eye to eye at all and they're just talking past each other is because of this, because of social media, because of the information
Well, it doesn't
networks.
get clicks, right? If you have what's the word? A modest take or like a nuanced take.
Yeah. The modest and nuanced takes never get eyes.
Yeah.
But if you're trying to get stuff done, oftentimes you're as Keith would say, making the sausage. If you're part of the making the sausage process, it's really hard to say crazy things by yourself and just post it without having anybody engage with you. If you have to engage with other people who differ in opinion than you, and because you have to get stuff done, like basically building consensus, then you realize just how valuable it is to be patient, to embrace diversity of thought, to know that you have to make compromises. And that's how human beings move forward.
If you don't mind me asking, what was the reason for cutting out the makeup? I mean, besides like the egregious amount of money it costs.
Yeah. I mean, I have friends who are really into it. So as a form of art, as a form of a passion, I totally respect it. It's just that for me, that's not what I put I don't care about it.
That's
the
fair.
Things that I care about are, I love to work out.
Yeah.
So I'm in the gym every day, even as an 8-month pregnant lady.
That's incredible.
I could do a pull-up.
I wake up too tired. I'm like, I'm skipping the gym. Like,
I love the gym. Yeah, and I really like going on adventures. I like food a lot.
Yeah.
I like
favorite dish.
Dish,
because I sometimes say cuisine type, and then like I always say like it's a mix of something, or like let's say maybe top 3, dishes if you had to pick 3.
I really like Kabuli pulao, which is an Afghan dish, and of course it has saffron in it.
Yep.
And I like raisins, so it has raisins and carrots and rice and cumin and lamb. So or goat.
I don't want to mix up cuisines because I think Iranian food also has one where it's baked up and then they flip it.
Yeah, it's kind of like a pilaf. So it's because they're right next to each other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would not dare to offend one way or the other of saying they're identical. So I'll
they're
say
not identical. They're
different in their own respective ways.
Yeah.
Even
What's
though they
interesting?
maybe have the same ingredients.
Yeah. You kind of go across if a dumpling, for example. In Afghan cuisine, it's manti, and it has green onions inside. In Korea, it's mandu, and I forget there's another one that has like a man something. But it's interesting how this is sort of carried across, and I think it has something to do with the Silk Road.
Yes, so talking about things I can nerd out on. I can nerd out on video games. And I can also nerd out on food. So, like along the same lines, in China, you have the Shaoling Bao.
Yeah.
And then if you go into Georgia, the country, not the state, they have it's not khachapuri, it's king kali.
King Kali
is essentially a Georgian version of a Shaoling Bao. Hopefully I don't get hate comments for
with
that.
With the soup on the inside.
It's a soup dumpling.
Oh,
and like
love it.
You can see, and then the khachapuri, it's essentially like a cheese bread, which you could then see that it's it's a rough version of a pizza, and Italians are probably going to get mad that I say that. But like, you can just see all these variants of foods, right? I mean, what's really the difference between, a noodle from Asia and an Italian style pasta, right?
Absolutely.
They're all kind of intertwined between each other. I love that kind of stuff.
I know. I really got into food once I got into the food industry
Yep.
with Rumi Spice. And so it's opened up a whole world for me.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so, okay, so digression aside, MRE, out of 10, what would you rate? Let's start with the main entree and then MRE as a whole.
Oh, I don't want to. At some point, I signed up to be a food critic, just like as a anonymous food critic for restaurants. So I feel like it anyway. It hasn't changed in a lot of
Really?
ways.
Okay.
Yeah, it's still kind of tasteless, or it's like off somehow. But I totally respect what they do in Evansville, Indiana here, which is give you food that is palatable-ish.
Yep.
And will last 10 years in the bag. It's great. If I could give it a grade from 0 to 10, it'd be a 5.
Okay. That's respectable.
Yeah.
I think that's a fair score.
I would eat it.
We like on the scale of like food, we've been getting, 2s, 3s, and then on the ratings of MREs, we've been getting like anywhere from 5 to 8 depending on the MRE. This one for me, I think this one's solid. The entree 7.5.
Oh, that's really
on the MRE
high.
scale.
Okay.
I did do the tuna, which was just Star-Kissed tuna, and I think that was the highest, which was like an 8.5 because it's like,
Why don't they just do that for everybody?
right?
Oh, yeah.
Why not? Yeah. Would I take this or Gramercy Tavern? I'd probably take Gramercy Tavern.
The day that we found out we were pregnant is when we went to Gramercy Tavern.
Oh,
I love
really?
that place. And I remember trying to sell Saffron to them.
Did they say no?
Gramercy said no, but Union Square Hospitality Group said yes, and they sourced from
So
us for
not
many
shout out
years.
to Gramercy Tavern, shout out to which one?
Union Square Cafe.
Union Square Cafe.
Yeah.
All right.
And Union Square Hospitality Group that also
Yeah.
owns Shake Shack.
Okay.
Well, Shake Shack doesn't source Saffron, but they have a catering company for the Union Square Hospitality
Yep.
Group.
Um,
Danny Meyer.
I'm very so my fiance was literally at Gramercy Tavern for a work event yesterday,
Oh,
and I
okay.
did not get invited. I was like, I'm only ever so slight. Oh, it's fine. I
It's
got
okay.
invited to
You
a
can go
different event.
back.
No, at this point, they're I have a vendetta against them, but no, I have to go. I have to go at some point because I've heard great things.
It's really hard to stay open as a restaurant and have that level of quality over a decade, which is
Yeah.
what they've had now.
This is a complete digression, but we have time. Four Horsemen,
Yes.
thoughts. Is it worth the impossible task of being able to get a reservation?
The way to do it is to walk in on an afternoon on Sunday.
I do. Mhm.
Okay, so you do this. Okay.
I get on the list, and if there's because now they're doing lunches between services. If there's like a little bit of a wait, I go to a local restaurant, grab a beer or a cocktail, come
Of
back. when I
course,
got called.
Williamsburg. You just
Mhm.
there's no dearth of amazing restaurants and places to eat.
So, Four Horsemen, pretty high on the list, or
Very high. I really love Four Horsemen.
it's great.
Yeah.
I'm gonna sound like a hipster here. I got to them before they got their star.
Good for
Did
you.
Did I put them on the map? Maybe. Can't prove I didn't. And absolutely love them. I've gone back multiple times. I'm only frustrated that it's so hard to get a reservation now. But to your point, and now I'm exposing it to everybody who comes to New York, go at they open up at 5:30 for service. So you get there at 5, wait 30 minutes, get your name on the list, and you just either get seated or wait 20 minutes.
Exactly.
Fantastic. I'm also a big fan of LCD Sound System.
Oh.
Instagram handle right here. Big fan of LCD Sound System. Who is the lead singer of LCD? Is
Oh, that's
the
right.
owner
I forgot
of-
about that.
Yep.
That's true.
So he's the owner of Four Horsemen. So it's like a
love
perfect
LCD
pair for-
sound system.
Mhm. So great wine. Amazing food, great wine, and also great band. So
Yeah. Okay. So
Um,
is that your favorite spot in the city?
it's up there. There's a restaurant right across the street from me that I won't, so I don't dox myself. But that is it's not anything fancy. It's good food, and if I don't feel like cooking that day, it's let's go out, let's grab a little food there, and
Mhm.
doesn't break the bank.
Yeah.
What about you? Favorite restaurant in the city?
I have a lot of favorite places, but one that just immediately came to mind was this tiny hole in the wall, cash only in
Mhm.
Chinatown. They serve on basically kind of plastic plates.
Awesome. You know it's gonna be good then.
Yeah, and it's always crowded.
Yeah.
It's just they're just churning out dumplings and noodles. I love that place. Another one, that my husband and I recently went to was Ska Kakulu.
Okay.
It's Albanian food.
Ooh.
So I mean, speaking
Good
of
wine,
dumplings,
yeah.
yeah, and they have good wine. Although we can't partake right now.
I know.
Yeah. They have great bread. So they have I guess almost like a pizza oven, right? But they make really great bread.
Yeah.
And just all their food is extremely good.
The Turkish pita, peta. It's like a really long form, and they usually add some stuff to it, and it's really, really good as well. All right, food digression aside.
We could do food forever. Yeah.
Exactly. The Saffron business. Is it still running? Obviously, I mean, the kind of elephant in the room is some things happened in Afghanistan recently. Did that have an effect on it? Like, how do you even, most people who run companies, the challenges they face is, my delivery showed up late, or, maybe I lost a customer. Not the country in which we're sourcing from has completely collapsed and the entire government is changing.
So actually, it hasn't been that bad on the supply chain for us.
Okay.
At Rumi Spice with the Taliban taking over. It's actually some of our managers in Afghanistan were telling us that it's become more stable because it's safer. The roads are safer. There is government control. There's not as many outlaws. They crack down really hard. I think the Taliban government is trying to become a legitimate governing body, recognized internationally. So they've made some overtures. I've heard that they started opening girls' schools. Nobody covers this in the news. I have no idea. I'm not there, so I'm just only hearing stuff from people on the ground, and it's quiet. I don't hear anything in the US news about it. And as far as our supply chain goes, it's fine.
Right.
The problems have actually been with just the regular startup stuff.
Yeah.
So I left Rumi Spice full time in 2018, and it's just been kind of a tough, just you reach a certain scale. We at the time that I left, we had just won being national in Whole Foods for a couple of SKUs. We've increased that to 12 now. I think actually a little bit more. So we're into different spice blends and saffron, of course. And then keeping that up, because it's now you're just thinking about a regular supply chain with different sources of spices, not just from Afghanistan, from other places, and then packaging and co-packing and having a third-party logistics warehouse and the pricing, and then having to deal with Amazon as an online channel versus your own online store. That's just the regular business stuff. And I think, we're doing great, and we have a lot of really great products. There have been a lot of competitors in the space as well. And I actually think that's great because the more business that Afghanistan gets, and if there's more saffron companies that come up that source out of Afghanistan, that is more kudos to all of this, because it's, we helped to plant a flag.
Right.
Hopefully it inspired other people. And I don't think we were the first either, but we're just one of the ones, we're grasping hands here together, right? Trying to bring value to Afghanistan. And having Afghanistan's value being brought to other places in the international community. I mean, this saffron that we would source was some of the best in the world.
Yeah.
And it would be in the tables of the French Laundry, Le Bernardin. And I know Danielle.
Yep.
Union Square Hospitality Group, as we mentioned. And again, I'm a big proponent of capitalism. I'm not against nonprofits. And I just think that with capitalism and with businesses, you are creating something sustainable. People are not buying out of the goodness of their hearts. They're buying because it's damn good saffron.
Yeah. And especially saffron too. Like, you're not going like, I'm spending $30. I don't know how much is it, $30 a gram or whatever.
Yeah. It is about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know my saffron prices.
Yeah. Nice. You foodie you.
Exactly. But like, right. I mean, you can feel good about a purchase, but at the end of the day, like, you're not going to want to sacrifice quality or the item itself.
Yeah.
I think some people like to think everyone can always be altruistic all the time, but at the end of the day, it's like, but you can't, right? Like, the reality of the world is like, like, something needs to be able to function.
Something needs to be able to function. And I'm not saying that the story of Rumi Spice is a big part of the brand. It absolutely is.
Yeah.
But also it needs to be really good saffron, and it has
Yeah.
to do what saffron does. And that's also why the farmers still partner with us, because we brand it as Afghan saffron. It's not being branded as Iranian saffron.
Yeah.
It's not being branded as Spanish saffron. If you are curious about this, you can ask me about how all this works. But having the branding be, oh, this is Afghan saffron. We're really proud that it's Afghan saffron. It's coming from these farmers. These farmers are not recipients of charity. These farmers are our trusted supply, or our trusted partners in the supply chain.
Mm-hmm.
So they are our equals. You know, they're doing this with us to bring value. That's what I love about startups and business.
One thing I want to hit on, and we're starting to come up to time, and this could 100% be a part 2. I don't know if you learned this in the military or you kind of always had this. A lot of the times in startups, you're starting a business that, like, how much did you know about Saffron before you started this
0.
company? Like, how do you go from that 0 to 1 of having no knowledge whatsoever about this industry to the different breeds, the locations, supply chain, international supply chain, no less, how to deal with farmers and communicate to them, contract negotiations. Like, how are you working through that?
That's a great question. I think, when we both enter the military, did we know anything about how to take apart an M14?
Nope.
Or, or even like throw a grenade or anything, literally, or do a PMCS. No, you got to learn from scratch. And it's good to have good teachers, right? People who've done it before you. But everybody learns. And I think that it's really healthy to go through life always learning, like always be learning. And I think if you're an entrepreneur type, you will always be doing that.
Yeah.
And it's exciting. At least if you like doing that, then maybe the entrepreneur life is for you. I didn't know anything about Saffron when we started. And, I had to do a lot of studying. I had to fall on my face when I was selling and talk too much and then not talk enough. And, I remember I was in New York City. I was not living here, but I flew to New York City to try to sell, and I would knock on the doors of the Gramercy Taverns and the different restaurants, and I would show up at like 5 p.m. And they'd be like, "What are you doing? Like, we're about to start service. You're a vendor. Like, you should know better."
Yeah.
And I was like, "Oh, I can't show up at 5." And then I realized, okay, I can show up at like 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock or 3 o'clock or something when, they're not like about to start service. So you just have to be aware that you're going to make some mistakes and you're going to get yelled at, or people are going to not like you. And you just have to pick up and keep going. You're going to fail. People say this, but really when you go through it, or do you have what it takes to just be like, okay, all right, I failed. Let's move on.
I feel like there's so many cliches or like platitudes when talking about startups that, if I rewound the clock, 5, 8 years ago, I'd be like, yeah, but like, no duh. But that iteration, and it is so true. It's like so much of starters, like how many times can you get punched in the face?
Yeah.
And then just be like, cool, awesome. Like, let me just take it again. Like, let me just keep getting punched in the face and being unabashful of having egg on your face and saying the wrong thing. Like, there's so many times where like, yeah, you're in a meeting or like we're talking to a vendor and you have to go like, okay, I'm going to Google this really quickly on the side, or just go, you said this, I don't know what that means. Can you like educate me on that really quickly? And like try to learn on the fly when you're talking. Cause it's like, oh, this is the first time I'm ever talking to this vendor trying to buy this. And I either have to quickly do it or just be really comfortable with just saying like, I don't know. Can you explain that a little bit more to me?
Exactly. Yeah. I had similar experiences too, where sometimes I'd overreach and say something that I actually didn't really know. It's like that that sin that women say about men, which is that they are very confident, but they actually don't know what they're talking about. Like I had to do that too. And sometimes you just have to do that. And sometimes you have to be honest, like you said, and say, I have no idea, actually. But let me get back to you on that. And do the homework and come back and show them what you got.
I had a friend call me out because we had a guest on who was using a lot of military acronyms. And I was just kind of like, yep. And he texted me and he goes, you didn't know what any of those acronyms were, did you? I'm like, nope. But it was fine. I'm like, I'm not going to stop the conversation. I'm like, yep. I'm just going to search that up afterwards.
Yeah, if it interrupts the flow.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You said you left or kind of moved away from the kind of full-time role in 2018. You know, with the last few minutes, like, what are you doing now and what's getting you excited?
I went back into mechanical engineering once I
Mhm.
left Rumi Spice. I had this wild dream to be an astronaut. I'm
Uh-huh.
sure lots of people have had the same, right? And so I was just going to go for it. So I went back to school to get a master's in mechanical engineering. And I've had so many adventures. It was so awesome. And I met so many great people. And also learned that my forte is in leading people and leading teams
Mhm.
and also business. It's not in, you know, like you should not trust me to fix your car.
Right.
I mean, I can kind of do it. If
Thankfully, we live in New York, so most people shouldn't be having cars here.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I can, there's a difference between, and I think this is good to talk about, you wanting to be really good at something and spending the time to do it versus you just love it and you
Mhm.
can't stop talking about it. I mean, I love startups. I love building something and leading teams, or it's not about me leading, but it's like, I just love doing things with other people to like figure out something that's kind of hard, that's worth doing. And I can't stop doing it. So
Yeah.
you got to find something that you also are like that. I know you've done this a couple
Yeah.
times now, right? Like that passion, you know when it's there. You know when it's there and you know when it's not. And anyway, sorry, I had just pregnant moment right now and I forgot the question.
Totally fine. What are you doing now?
What am I doing now?
Yes.
So I'm in a different industry. I'm in media.
Okay.
So I teamed up with Rosie Pie, who's my co-founder.
Instagram handle here.
Huh?
Oh, sorry. I talked to my the editor and I just say Instagram handle here, so
Okay.
he knows that. So ignore that completely.
Okay, no worries. Okay. So what I'm doing now, I'm with Blanchard House. So I
Mhm.
co-founded this company with my partner Rosie Pie. She's a former BBC and Economist journalist,
Oh, wow.
and we basically poached a bunch of her friends from the BBC and the Economist and the Times of London to come join us, and we make audio documentaries, like podcast series, narrative nonfiction for Apple, Audible, Wondery, and they're very journalistic in nature. Some of them are very literary. We've done an Agatha Christie series that's been really great. We've done some true crime about a guy named Victor Kojeni who
Mhm.
swindled a bunch of people into buying the nationally owned Azerbaijani oil, or he tried to.
Yeah.
About another one called it's called Hooked on Freddy, and it's about a man accused of having sex with a dolphin. It's wild. Anyway, we make these stories, and it's the first time that I've led creatives and
Uh-huh.
helped them be on the path of entrepreneurship.
I was gonna
It's been
say
great.
there's a lot of times when people talk about you got the left side of the brain and the right side of the brain, right? Like you got the creative side and like the engineering side, right? Do you believe in that, or do you think that there is that mix of the analytical and the creative side? Because it seems like, I mean, building this company, you're blending, right? The analytical, how do you have a business? How do you make it profitable? All that with like a heavily, heavily creative side of building stories and narratives.
Well, to be clear, I don't do any of the creative side. I'm not building any stories. I'm helping them to basically run the company.
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny because I'm also bringing stuff from the military, like AARs, after action reports.
Yep.
And we do like a quad chart for, for an all hands meeting. That
Do you
kind of
also
thing.
knife hand them though?
I have. We've joked about the knife hand. Actually, my husband started doing knife hand.
It's a great form of communication style.
Yeah.
Unless it's your significant other and they're like, why are you knifing handing me? Why are you like
I forgot her name, but she was saying how like if you want to be more, let's say you want to have to come out more confident in speaking, then like put your hands on your hips. And if
Mhm.
you knife hand, then you all of a sudden you're like, people want to listen to you. So there's some body feedback. Like you can do the motions and will actually make you more confident. Anyway, that I digress. I have another pregnant moment. I forgot the question.
No, I think we're on the same, a lot of this podcast is just a whole bunch of rabbit holes that we go down.
Okay.
No, I mean, that's incredible. And so like, how long have you been doing that for? And like, I guess, what does the future hold for Kim? Like, you've gone on all these different journeys. Are you the type of person who goes, I know where I want to be in 30 years, or just kind of one foot in front of the other, and here's the general path that I want to go down?
I don't know that anyone knows for sure what they're going to do, and I'm really happy with that. And
Mhm.
I don't want to know exactly what's around the corner sometimes. I will say I'm really happy in my relationship. Like I feel like I waited until the very end to get married
Mhm.
and to have a child and to be on this journey of motherhood and growing a family. Like I feel like I was able to do all the stuff as a single person and go after my dreams and everything in my 20s and my 30s, most of my 30s. And now I feel like the time is ripe to grow a family. So
Yeah.
it's almost like I am settling down, you
Yeah.
know? And then in terms of career, I think I'm going to start more businesses. And I've been talking about it with some of my friends who I've met along the way who I think would make great co founders. And I think I'll be starting businesses for the rest of my life. I don't know that I will ever work for corporate. I've also thought about being like a portfolio operations sort of person at a private equity firm, especially in manufacturing or infrastructure, you know, the like
Yeah.
more like physical. And or maybe helping to advise portfolio companies for VCs,
Mhm.
like an entrepreneur residence, like you
Yeah,
are
yeah, yeah,
too. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. I think I like that stuff, and but I can't make those decisions right now. I should
Yeah.
probably have the baby and then like see how it goes.
Yeah.
But I'm open to it, and I love my husband. He's so great. He's also an entrepreneur. Whatever I can do to help him grow his company, which is called
Mhm.
Osmo. They're bringing computers a sense of smell.
Yep.
They just teleported a plum smell,
That's pretty
teleporting a
cool.
smell, which is amazing.
Can that work for the saffron? Teleport the smell of saffron across the world and say,
Absolutely.
this is now the smell of the area that you're gonna get from.
Yeah, yeah, and there's so many more applications. Like just think what you could do with detecting chemicals or detecting threats
Yeah.
or
Even
detect
like your EMT, like if you're
yeah.
like at your house, like is this smell now gas, or with whatever they add to your fuel to make it smell,
Yeah,
or
like a
yeah, yeah,
general purpose sensor, let's say
yeah,
that eventually will be on your phone and you're like, "Oh, I'm sick," or "My
yeah.
baby's sick," or like, "This is what these ingredients are made of," or "This is what
Mhm.
I'm smelling in the air." Or, there's just think about our senses, right? We get so much
Yeah,
from vision and it's been digitized for so long because we have pixels and there's RGB. So that's how you digitize it.
yeah,
How do you digitize smell? It's a little harder,
yeah,
but you get so much information from smell. And it's also linked more directly with your brain, which is why its memories come up more easily when
yeah.
you smell something. It's more powerful, it's more linked to your emotions.
Well, going back on the food track, so much of if you plug your nose and try to taste something, it will not taste the same. Like you get,
Exactly.
I'm gonna make this number up. 60% of your taste comes through the smell of the food.
Exactly. It is. It's totally that. And so smell is a big part of my life, obviously because of my husband,
Yeah.
but also because of Saffron.
Mm-hmm.
I remember the moment that I turned the corner in Afghanistan and saw the first blooming saffron fields.
Oh, I
It
can't
was
imagine.
this carpet of purple.
That is cool.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
And the backdrop of, it's like Afghanistan's pretty mountainous and kind
Mm-hmm.
of dust colored. And so this carpet of purple flowers with these little red stigmas, just something. It's a sight to behold.
Yeah. I mean, you brought up so many great things. And going back to cliche statements, but talking about your significant other, because I think about that a lot too. With like my fiance, it's just like just find the person that you're kind of happy like building with, right? Like whether that be building your company or just supporting each other with what you're doing. Like it's so important. And I think that was the switch that clicked with me where before I didn't maybe want a kid because like I didn't really have that person. I like obviously dated, but it wasn't, obviously the right person. And then when you do find that right person, like everything becomes so much more fun where you're like, we're doing this together and you got your things and I've got my things, but it's all as a kind of a team towards
A
whatever that
team.
nebulous goal is, right? Like you said, like nobody really knows what they want to do in 30 years. It's a complete nebulous cloud, but like we're going towards it together. So might as well figure out that path.
The journey is what counts.
Yeah.
And in addition to what you said, it's finding the right person, but it's also you changing and
Hmm.
being ready to be open for that relationship. And I mean, I think when I have kids and some of my younger friends, I'll try to advise them if, sometimes it works the other way around, but I always think like I don't think you should get married until your 30s at
Yeah.
least, because
I'm
your brain
31.
changes.
Yeah.
Your brain changes a lot.
I agree with that a lot, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think they even show studies that divorce rates actually plummet when you get into your 30s and you marry.
It makes a lot of
nothing against
sense.
anyone that-
Yeah, because
yeah.
you're just growing too much, and things are, you don't want to like tie yourself down. You and the other person, you don't want to tie yourself down too early.
The two things I dodged from the military is I didn't get married and didn't have a kid and didn't pick up a nicotine addiction.
Good for you.
So I feel like I did a very good job during my enlistment.
And like to everybody out there who does have
And
that,
no
that's
offense,
totally cool.
And if you did do that, that's maybe not the nicotine thing. You
No
should probably
nicotine.
quit. You should probably quit. But everything else, well, that's fine.
Yeah, when you have a
each their-
coffee addiction,
I
that's
do.
fine.
Well, yeah, I do have the caffeine thing. Yeah, that I do have. So I guess I didn't go completely unscathed. Kim, where can people find you? Any shout outs? Companies, LinkedIn's, Instagram, shout out anything that you want.
Yeah, so Blanchard House, we make some really great podcasts. So if you're looking for a series that you can binge and get into, we just released Extrasensory. It's an Apple TV original. It's narrated by Will Sharp, who was on White Lotus.
Oh, big fan of White Lotus.
Yeah.
One of my
awesome too.
top 5 shows.
Will
though.
Sharp is awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we made that show for Apple, and it's really, really good.
Yeah.
Yeah. And another one would be, if you want a more, if you have an Audible subscription, I think the Agatha Christie and Dandelion Poisoner, that one's really good. It's narrated by Joe Nocera. He used to be at Bloomberg. He's now at the Free Press. He's great. He also did The Shrink Next Door.
Oh.
If you've heard of that podcast, which is this crazy story. Like, you know how he's a psychiatrist, but he has gotten his clients to give over their life savings and has like lived in their mansions in their master bedroom, that kind of stuff. It's like having like that psychological control.
Oh my God.
It's fascinating.
That is
incredible. That's another one. The Shrink Next Door is a classic one. It's also turned into a TV show, Apple TV.
Awesome. All right, so we're gonna just shout out a whole bunch. This whole screen will now get filled up with all the podcasts and all the chat.
Yeah, but that's not a Blanchard House one. So
okay.
Pirate of Prague.
Never mind. Actually, don't cut.
Extrasensory. Yeah. Hooked on Freddy. Black and Blue is another one. And what am I forgetting? What just came out? Anyway. Oh, Butterfly King.
Ooh.
Yeah, Butterfly King's really good.
Awesome.
It's a World War II story. Hitler murdering the king of Bulgaria.
I'm gonna have to check this out this weekend. I'm gonna have to start now just binging all of these.
They're great.
Fantastic. Well, Kim, hopefully the MRE wasn't too bad. Hopefully you enjoyed it just a little bit. I mean, compared to the Four Horsemen, probably not.
Let's go to the Four Horsemen sometime.
Yeah, I would love to. Awesome. Thank you so much, Kim. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Holden. It's so
Thank
nice
you.
to be here with you.